Hi guys and welcome. This is Jen Gaeta Siciliano, artist, memoir writer, bipolar psychiatric survivor, and your host of Not As Crazy As You Think podcast, the place that offers an alternative perspective on mental illness, highlighting creativity, non-conventional healing, and breaking on through to the other side. If you are ready for a new narrative on the mental realm that celebrates crazy and cool without penalty, then Not As Crazy As You Think is for you. Hello, thank you for joining us today. This is Jen Gaeta Siciliano, your host of Not As Crazy As You Think podcast. Emma Haynes is an artist, songwriter, musician, and filmmaker currently living in the UK. At university, she studied environmental science, later taught English and art in a Cambodian orphanage, studied climate change in Malaysian rainforests, and even lived on her own in a 23-foot sailing boat for a year. She went on to tour as a saxophonist and musician in several bands throughout Europe and was recently featured on BBC Radio Wales as a BBC introducing artist and has just signed her first record deal. In 2012, she was prescribed bromazepam abroad after going a year with undiagnosed asthma and reduced lung capacity, which led to anxiety. She followed doctor's orders as prescribed for 4 years, and without knowing the risks, she cold turkeyed the drug, which caused protracted benzodiazepine withdrawal. She decided to write the soundtrack for the film, Playing with Life, the soundtrack, as part of her recovery, and explores the role of creativity in her healing. And the film will be exploring the powers of art, nature, surfing and healing, and well-being. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so thrilled you could be with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm just going to read the movie description. As a musician fights to heal from a medicine that almost killed her, she writes the soundtrack for her documentary film to tell the truth in this story of adversity, dreams, and hope. Emma, why don't you just give us a rundown, your background, and how you came about to start this film up?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen. So as you sort of explain, my background was in education and science. I've always had an interest. My heart's always been mostly aligned with the creative subjects. I studied science to maybe go on to then produce documentaries about science and humanitarian issues. Of course, the recession hit in 2009, so that kind of changed things up a little bit. But I was doing my postgrad in education, training to become a teacher when I contracted a virus. This was about 10 years ago now. And at the time, doctors told me nothing was wrong. It was just the stress of teaching. And of course, we all know intuitively when something is wrong. But over a year of going back and forth to the doctors, and with them still telling me that it was all in my head, I kind of just accepted that. And then I moved to France to start working there. And 3 months into that, they found out my lung capacity was at 60%, and I had developed a kind of asthma off the back of this virus. We now know that with the likes of COVID, it can actually cause anxiety directly as well through the chemical shifts in the brain. And so through a combination of that and not being able to breathe properly for a year and not being believed, I developed quite severe anxiety and was having panic attacks, and a door closing would sound like a bomb going off, or I would look at the sun and I would think it was going to explode because all my senses were just overwhelmed. So I was prescribed this benzodiazepine in France, and I was kept on it for 4 years. I tried to come off it after a few months because I just thought, I'm a young, healthy 23-year-old. Why do I need drugs? I'd never needed drugs before. I'd traveled much of the world, been fortunate enough to do that. Was adventurous and a kind of a free spirit, and it didn't make any sense to me. So I tried to come off them, and the doctors essentially forced me to stay on them and sort of said, "What are your symptoms now?" Now I know they were side effects of the drug itself, and so I was kept on it for 4 years. I started having heart palpitations. That was my predominant symptom. And I came back to the UK in 2016, and I found out that I should have only been given the drug for a week maximum due to the risks involved. I cold turkeyed because I'd heard this news, and I thought, well, I don't want to deal with this anymore. So I came off, obviously not knowing the risks. I don't have a death wish, and my life turned upside down pretty quickly, and I had to give up my job, give up my career. and spent the majority of my life between 2016 and 2021, mostly housebound, dealing with anywhere between 40 to 60 symptoms. Had 35 ambulances in that time for tachycardia. I think right at the beginning, my heart was going to sort of 180 BPM. And each time I was, I genuinely thought this is it. And yet didn't have any answers. So it took about 2 years for doctors to actually say, yeah, this is the problem. Because up until that time, like with the virus, I was being told nothing was wrong and it was in my head. And a paramedic actually said to me, "Oh, I think this is benzodiazepine withdrawal." And I was like, "Benzo what? What is a benzo?" Like I just didn't even have any recognition of what that was or understanding. And so I went to the doctors and finally saw a doctor that, in her own words, said to me, "This drug poisoned you. I'm so sorry. And there's nothing we can do about it." So around that time, now equipped with this knowledge of what happened, I went online, I went on Instagram, started hashtagging this new vocabulary that I had. And I think from there, that was a real turning point in terms of finding support, finding understanding, finding validation. And I kind of went back into myself in terms of, what do I do with my life now? I can't teach. I don't know if I'll ever be able to work again in a full capacity. What do I do? And I kind of, I went back to my dream of making films. And I thought, this needs to be told. This needs to be, communicated. And what better way to do it than using creativity? And so the idea for the film sort of started fruitioning from there. And I've always loved music. That's been my biggest passion. And so the narrative is to write the soundtrack for the film as part of the film and as part of my own recovery. So, and then Cassette Monkeys came about. So yeah, that's kind of a summary of where everything came about.
That's amazing. It sounds like an incredible journey. I know we're going to learn a lot from this film. And it is such a relief to know that there's people like you out there who are willing to tell your story, because I guess that's the only way we're going to be able to connect. I was similar in that I thought I was on my own with this, and then when I started, thank goodness, this online community that's continuing to emerge for us, it's helping us all connect. And it's like a new day. I understand in tandem with the film, you are producing an NFT collection called Cassette Monkeys in order to create community and funding for the production. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And, how can people learn more about getting involved through that?
Yeah, sure. So Cassette Monkeys came about simply because I was sort of dabbling in the crypto and NFT space last year, maybe the year before as well. And just realized the power of community around the collections. So there's this sort of stigma that NFTs are just JPEGs and just digital art, and who would want to buy one of those? But actually, it's a really powerful system where community can be built around the art and around the brand and around the utility that associates with the brand. I was just kind of doodling away at these pictures, and I was like, I've drawn a mouse. I don't know why I've drawn a mouse, but I've drawn a mouse. And I kind of was like, what am I doing here? And the mouse over time kind of morphed into this monkey. And I have the original drawings in one of my notebooks. And I think somehow from there, I love the nostalgia of cassette tapes. Like I actually collect, like I'll right click and save pictures of cassette tapes because I just find them just great. And yeah, so somehow I think that morphed with the monkey that I was drawing. And I just thought maybe this could be the ideal way to build community around the film and actually fund the production of the film that way, instead of going down a traditional path where we maybe then lose kind of creative sovereignty over the film. If we had a couple of very, significant corporate investors, for example, versus maybe 5,000 or 3,000 individuals and companies around the world who believe in the project, believe in the film. What if they were the financiers, and in return, they own an image or two that essentially acts as a share in the film? So the more successful the film, the more value those NFTs have, which, as we've seen with some of the most successful NFT projects, can be in the very high ranges of 6-7 figures. So that's kind of how it came about. And the plan as well is, obviously with a film, it's great to think about it when it's out, but it's also kind of frustrating because you want to just get it out and share the message and share the journey of that. And so Cassette Monkeys really is a way to invite the community in, not only with the production of the film as we go, but also enabling us to kind of serve and support the community whilst the production of the film is taking place. So the idea is we'll have workshops, podcasts, webinars, community chats, talent competitions in art and music, inviting guest speakers on board in the realms of well-being and creativity to serve the community whilst the film is in production.
Wow, that's amazing. So one of the ways that you're approaching this, kind of developing an independent community, like online, with like social pages and stuff like that, so that they can connect on their own as well?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about NFT collections is somehow everyone gravitates towards Discord. So that wasn't an app that I'd been familiar with before. But on there, you can have these channels and sub-channels where people can chat and discuss things. And that's kind of where we're going to have our main home, if you like. But then we're also going to have things like Facebook page, Twitter page, YouTube channel, have Cassette Monkeys TV, where we can curate a lot of the content from the webinars and podcasts, etc., into Cassette Monkeys TV. And we're also planning on having a live radio that will be open maybe 1 or 2 days a week in the evenings, where we'll then be available to chat with the community and vice versa. So yeah, we're still developing our community strategy and sort of the way in which we enable that. But that's our starting point for now.
That's amazing. Wow. I mean, NFT is such a new thing. I mean, for especially artists, we're all trying to look into it and try to capitalize on something, because it's like, wait, we have a window of opportunity. So to use this in this way, it's very interesting. Well, good luck with this. I'll definitely show some of these pictures of the Cassette Monkeys. They're adorable. Hopefully we will get the ball moving.
Thank you so much. We're actually going to launch what was going to be our generation 2, which is the 3-dimensional teenage Cassette Monkeys. We're actually going to launch those first. We think it's more in line with kind of our message, which is obviously when you're a teenager, kind of the reality of life hits you, and we will have our own reactions to that. And I think it's a chance for us to kind of explore the realms of well-being and mental health through the teenage Cassette Monkeys. And then the 2-dimensional ones, which we have the images for now, they'll also be released, but at a later stage in a sort of high school yearbook throwback kind of way. So yeah, that's the plan.
That's cute. Oh my gosh. I'm looking forward to that. One of the things that the film delves into is holistic healing, or with letting go of the drugs and finding better alternatives. And I know, Emma, with you too, you found art, music, nature to help you. That's that kind of stuff is explored in the movie, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of is our message. We're very much pro-science, but we're also pro-informed consent, firstly, and pro-health sovereignty. And I think that's something that we probably all feel cheated on, right? Like, we were told this is the best thing for your health, but in reality, it was the very worst thing for our health. Right. Really, what we needed was a nap, some rest, some therapy, some comfort, a hug, some decent food, some clean water, a bubble bath. Like, genuinely, I would love to go back in time and sort of run a parallel experiment and see if I'd had those things after the virus, and somebody had just gone, it's okay if you take a month off. Right. Like, it's actually necessary if you do that. Right. I would love to see how I would have developed. And I think in all honesty, the majority of people on these meds don't need them. Some people may well do, but for a very short period of time. These drugs get highly dangerous after even just a week, right? People are getting dependent on these. Their body becomes dependent on them after a few days in some cases. But I think the message is that the education is not there. The awareness is not there for both the first port of call being these holistic treatments, and the fact that these drugs are not the first port of call. They're the most dangerous things that we could have, and it's not necessary. So yes, they will definitely, the holistic healing side of things, creativity, that will be very much explored in the film, because we see that as being life-saving for people potentially.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting because so many of these things that, we've experienced are environmentally triggered. And, in time, these things can take care of themselves. And that's why it's hard for me in the mental health, awareness movement that doesn't really totally give in to understanding the full prescribed harm movement. It's get help as soon as possible. Get help, get help, get help. The help that's being offered, though, can be damaging. And I think that's why a lot of people are afraid. One of the things that, is the issue is that this is a global issue. I mean, Emma's in the UK over here, 2 of the countries in the world with the biggest problem. And I understand there's at least 20% or 1 out of 5 people in both countries are on these psychiatric drugs. And so there's the range of drugs, but benzos are particularly harmful. Now, we understand that there's the paradigm here, right? That there's that biomedical model that's saying that mental illness is in our biology. So how does the normal person who is struggling with this, how do we start having this conversation and trying to change people's perspective on this when the authorities are so, rooted in our cultures? What advice can you give to the listeners in that way?
I think it's, as you say, I think it's baby steps. I think the Me Too movement was an example of how those baby steps can occur and then develop into a critical mass of understanding and change. And at some point that starts with one voice, which starts with one word. And that one word evolves into a sentence, into a conversation, into somebody else going, I've had a similar experience. Maybe we should talk about this, into a group of people, into a movement. So I think really my personal answer is we all do what we can. And whether that's sharing our voices, sharing our art, sharing the truth, whether it's somebody else listening to that, and sharing the empathy with, maybe there's something here. Maybe these people should be listened to. Maybe we shouldn't just put our own filter on it in terms of what we believe to be the truth. Maybe we should take a step back and go, is there, some truth to this? Which, as we know, there is. But I think for a lot of people who haven't necessarily been through this firsthand, it's a shocking truth. I don't think I would have believed that this was reality had I not lived through it myself. And so I think everybody really can play a part in justice and fairness and safety in society, I think, by both talking and listening.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It's important for people to open up to, just receiving with compassion these stories, because, I think there's more people who are trying to move forward. Believing in yourself. I know it sounds so trite, but it's so true, but I want to also add this because it's so important. And this is why the movie's important. The idea is first, right? That, wait, I'm not crazy. I don't think I need this. Maybe it is mind over matter, right? But the truth of it is these drugs are designed to keep you on them so that they can make more money. Okay. So that physical addiction has occurred. So even though we know we could be without the aid of a physical pill inside intuitively, we still have to get through the withdrawal symptoms. And because they have denied all these years that you could even get physically addicted to these things, there's this perpetuating problem because you try to get off, you cold turkey, right? And then the withdrawal symptoms hit and they say, well, that's your sickness kicking in. And so then you have to get back on it. And then oh, thank God. Now that happened to me too. I was in and out of the hospital because every time I tried to get off or tried to make switches or whatever, it was oh, look, your shit is happening. Your bipolar stuff is happening. It's so my reminder to the audience is this is what we have to walk away with. But the withdrawal problems are so massively misunderstood because not enough people can be heard out, above the we know it all business, of drugs. Really, I mean, I hate to say it, but we have really given over our, medical system to drug pushers.
100%. Like that for me was kind of an awakening in itself. And I was always quite interested in watching documentaries and keeping up to date with the news, and I say the news, I mean, not necessarily from mainstream sources, but just I thought I was quite aware of how things worked. Mm-hmm. But realizing the reality of this was kind of a grief process in itself. Like, we are taught to trust in these systems that they know what's best. You're a child, you're a young person, you're not qualified, so you don't know. You have to listen to them. They're the adults, they're the professionals. And of course, many times that's true, but the scale of this and the way in which the patients are gaslit is just astonishing, because the consequence is life and death. Right. We're all still here and alive. Many people aren't. And even though we're still here and live and talking, we've had many years of our lives scarred because of these people telling us it's your fault and you have to do it this way. And, I think the funny thing is that we all had moments of that intuition. Jen, you tried to come off your drugs, myself, same. And yet we were forced to stay on them. Right. You need these. The fact that you're having issues is evident of, as you were saying, your problem. And to be honest, one of the hardest things for me to deal with, aside from the actual symptoms, aside from wondering if I might die in my 20s or 30s, was the feeling that I'd been tricked into taking such a potent drug that I never, ever would have put in my system. I, from a young age, just thought, I don't want to go down that route. I have ambitions. I want a career. I want a family. I want a normal, quote, normal life. I'm not going to touch drugs. It's not worth the risk. I need to keep this safe and sane. The fact that I was tricked by the very institution that we're supposed to trust in and was worn down year after year into believing in them, even when I was going back and forth to the doctor and saying something is not right, no one listened. No one listened. And for me, that feels like one of the worst kinds of violation a human being can go through.
Right. Yeah. And, that hierarchical relationship, it's like that is truly what the system imposes upon people. And you need to give into that. Otherwise, you're not going to get well on their program. So it's not just the pills, it's the system of philosophy and how things are going to then be in your life. When you go to a system that's really designed to perpetuate itself and to continue gaining and maximizing profit off the suffering of others, this is where, our mental health is not going to stick around, And one of the things that they just brought up in the UK is that the Royal College of Psychiatrists, under the leadership of Wendy Byrne, for the first time recognized that the severity and duration of antidepressant withdrawal is, a problem, and it's real. And so, this is a big call to the world, especially the APA, American Psychiatric Association, because, this idea of safe prescribing would be a big help to the profession as well. Looks like they're getting smart, because, okay, psychiatry is not going away. The drugs are not going to go away. But if they could admit at least that that they need to step up in their responsibility now, knowing these problems with withdrawal, and admit that it's real, then they can at least train their people. And so maybe if we could at least eliminate the gaslighting, that might be the beginning of a step in the right direction. So one of the facts that you bring up the film is that 120 million people worldwide are on the same class of this medication, this benzo.
Just in the States, actually. Yeah. That's just in the US.
Okay. So that's really scary because that is taken much further worldwide. I mean,
yeah,
I believe this baby step movement that's growing and picking up momentum is going to change things. And with this, the heart and soul and passion that you guys are putting into this, it's the beginning. It's the beginning. And I'm so thankful that you guys are on the front lines. Do you have anything else that you want to add to, what the audience needs to hear on this?
I think one of the main messages that's come up in this conversation and from my own experiences is really, trust your intuition and do the research. I was told by many, quote, professionals and experts not to trust Dr. Google. And the reality is, had I researched what I was on, I would never have ended up in the situation that I did. Of course, balance is needed and critical assessment is needed. But the system as it is not working, and it's killing people and it's destroying lives. So I think whilst we wait for the system to make those changes and catch up, and we have no power over that, I think it's important for people and the loved ones of those people to support in health sovereignty, and for there to be empathy and understanding around that, so people don't feel so alone. Because I think that also feeds into the system of people then feel like the only people they can trust are the experts. And of course, that's just one voice that's very heavily influenced by other interests. And so I think health sovereignty as an individual, but also as a community, whether that's family, whether that's friends, whether that's the community of people that are on the same thing or going through the same thing as you. I think just being human and supporting each other are very practical things that we can each do individually and collectively. Definitely.
I guess what we're asking people to do is to, mature. Think of, that we can change ourselves. We can change the way we approach people and hopefully create a more compassionate world. When does production begin for this film? I understand that you're going to be going on tour, Emma, and that's one of the main features of the narrative.
Yeah, that's the aim. That's the roadmap. The plan is to go into production by the end of this year. I'm hoping we can do that as soon as possible, maybe in summer. We are at the stage where we're looking for sponsors, investors, and partnerships. So the sooner we sort of get that in with Cassette Monkeys and get Cassette Monkeys launched, the sooner we go into production. So that's the plan. Then the plan is to go on a tour, play the music from the film that as part of the film itself, and also, film the journey of going on this adventure, literally, but also in terms of holistic healing and kind of going on the adventure of making peace with the past and rebuilding your life. So hopefully the film will be out towards the end of next year, and there may be some variations on that, but that's the plan. We also might have a short film coming out this year, which will be a sort of prototype of the feature film. So yeah, we'll be updating with news about both of those in the near future.
So tell us a link that people could go to that they can learn more about you and also the film.
Yeah, so at the moment we are working on the website behind the scenes. So to find out more information about the film, you can simply follow my Twitter or Instagram handle where I'll be posting updates. That's at @mjadehaynes on both accounts. And then, yeah, as I say, we'll be posting the website information and the Discord link for Cassette Monkeys next week, I think. So yeah, it'll be soon.
All right, awesome. And your website?
Oh, my website is emmahaynes.com. There is a website for the film, which is kind of just a landing website at the moment called thesoundtrackfilm.com. So they're all interlinked. So if you go on my Twitter or Instagram, there'll be links to the website and vice versa.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I am so thrilled that we were able to sit together and talk and get this out there.
The same to you, taking your time and stepping up to talk about this. We know it's not easy, and we know there's power in the collective effort of it. There were a couple of nationwide articles that came out about my story in the past couple of months, I think. And whilst it's good to get the story out there, it's kind of, your words are twisted, and it kind of comes across in a way where it's like, I think one of the articles started with, Emma Haynes is angry. And I'm like, wow. I mean, I am pretty, like, I've got emotions around this, but there's more to me than that. Just hearing your support for everything, it really does mean the world. So thank you as well.
I'm so happy. Thanks for listening to Not As Crazy As You Think, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And remember, mental health is attainable for anyone, especially those labeled with mental illness. Until next time, peace out.